Okay, picture this. You're 14 years old, you've just started dating your first real boyfriend. Life feels normal. School sports, hanging with friends, and then one night your phone buzzes. You open it and there's a text from an unknown number. It says, "Hi Lauren, Owen is breaking up with you." At first, you think it's a dumb prank, some classmate trying to mess with you, but then the texts don't stop. They start piling in, dozens every day, and soon they're not just teasing, they're cruel, personal, even dangerous. Sounds like some creepy catfish story, right? But here's the part that will knock the wind out of you. The person behind those texts wasn't a stranger. It wasn't even a classmate. It was someone far, far closer. Welcome back to Suspicious with Straubs. I am so glad you're here because today we're diving into one of Netflix's most chilling true crime documentaries yet. Unknown Number, the High School Catfish. And listen, if you've already seen it, you know how jaw-dropping this case gets. And if you haven't, don't worry, I am walking you through the entire story, start to finish, while also sharing my own thoughts along the way. So grab a blanket, maybe a cup of tea, because this one is going to stick with you. Just a quick disclaimer for this one, guys. This video discusses sensitive topics including cyberbullying, stalking, harassment, and family betrayal. Some details may be distressing, especially for younger viewers. Please take care of yourself while watching, and if at any point this feels too heavy, it's completely okay to click away. Your mental health comes first. I will leave mental health and crisis resources linked in the description, as well as everything I used to research this case. I do my best to research carefully, but I am only human. If I misspeak or misinterpret something, know that it's not intentional. My goal is to cover this story with empathy and respect for everyone affected and involved. Okay, let's set the scene. We are in Beale City, Michigan. And when I say small town, I mean tiny. Like, the population is around 300 people. It's the kind of place where everybody knows everybody. Like, if you're late to school, people already know about it before you even get there. There's one school in town that is literally kindergarten through 12th grade, all under the same roof. Friday night football games, that's the event of the week. The entire community shows up, whether you've got kids in school or not. It's safe. It's familiar. It's the sort of place where parents leave their doors unlocked and kids ride bikes until the sun goes down. Now, right in the middle of this postcard little town is Lauryn Licari. She's 13 in 2020. Quiet, thoughtful, a little shy, but sweet. The kind of girl teachers would say was dependable, with a close sort of circle of friends. And then there's Owen McKenny. Same age, same school. He's more outgoing, athletic, funny, the kind of kid who makes people feel comfortable around him. And like so many small towns, Lauren and Owen had grown up orbiting each other. By middle school, they started dating. It wasn't some dramatic teen romance. It was innocent, wholesome, the kind of first love parents secretly find adorable. Their parents knew each other really well and they would all hang out together. Lauren's mum, Kendra Licari, was really involved in the school activities. She was a coach, someone who volunteered, someone who seemed deeply involved in making the community better. So on the surface, everything looked perfect. 2 kids in a young love, a tight-knit little town wrapped around them. Nobody knew at the time. What nobody could have guessed is that things were about to unravel in a way that would change their lives forever. Because the very first text Lauren received, those 6 simple words, would set off a chain of events that exposed the most shocking betrayals I have ever heard of. So here's where things start to get really weird. So it's October 2020, just another ordinary evening. Lauren's at home in her room, maybe scrolling TikTok, maybe chatting with Owen. Totally normal. Then her phone buzzes. It's that first unknown text. It reads, "Hi Lauren, Owen is breaking up with you." Now, if you've ever been 13, you know how devastating something like that would feel. Your first relationship feels huge at that age, right? And then some faceless number is telling you that it's over. Of course, Lauren was confused, but she also brushed it off. She thought, okay, this has to be a joke, right? Maybe some classmate with nothing better to do. Owen thought the same thing, but then the messages kept coming and coming. What started as one prank text quickly snowballed into dozens of messages every single day. They weren't funny anymore. They were cruel. They were designed to cut really, really deep. The messages said things like, "Nobody likes you, you're worthless, you should hurt yourself." And it wasn't just once or twice. Lauren was getting 40 to 50 texts every single day. Imagine your phone blowing up constantly and every single buzz makes your stomach drop because you know it's going to be another attack. Like, for a grown adult, that would still be really hard to handle. So imagine a 13, 14-year-old having to deal with that, you know? And this is the part that hit me while watching the documentary. These weren't random generic insults. Whoever was sending these texts, they knew personal details. They referenced things only people close to Lauren and Owen would know about, which instantly makes this scarier because that means it's not some random troll out in the world, it's someone close to them. And when I think back to being that age, honestly, I don't know how I would have handled this. Your whole world is on your phone and suddenly your phone is turned against you. That safe space becomes this horrible weapon. It's isolating. It makes you feel like everyone could be against you. And that's exactly how Lauren started to feel. So at first it was just Lauren's phone lighting up. She was the one taking all of the hits. But it didn't stay that way for long. Before too long, Owen started getting messages too. And then the second he got dragged in, everything got so much messier. His texts weren't random either. They were targeted, manipulative. Things like, "Lauren's lying to you, she's cheating." Or on the flip side, on Lauren's end, "Owen doesn't care about you, Lauren, he's going to leave you." It was like this faceless texter was trying to play them against each other, twisting their trust, planting doubts, stirring up drama that wasn't even there. And it worked. Lauren started asking Owen questions. Did he really still care about her? Was he hiding something? And Owen, who's also just a 13-year-old kid, suddenly had to prove himself constantly against this invisible enemy. How exhausting that must have been. Like, when you're 13, you're supposed to be worrying about homework and whether your crush is going to hold your hand at the football game, not defending yourself against some mystery stalker who knows your every move. And think about the pressure this put on their relationship. The constant messages, the paranoia, the tension. It's like someone was sitting in the middle of their relationship, pulling them apart piece by piece. Eventually, Owen cracked under the stress. In a moment of total desperation, he told Lauren something heartbreaking. He said maybe if we just broke up, the messages would stop and maybe we can try again later. And that was it. They ended their relationship. Not because of normal teenage drama, not because of a fight, but because they thought it was the only way to stop the harassment. But here's the gut punch. The breakup didn't stop the texts. If anything, it made them worse. And at this point, both of them are in way over their heads. They're teenagers. Their mental health is spiraling and they have no idea who to trust. Which means it was finally time to bring in the adults. So by now, both Lauren and Owen are getting hammered with these texts. Their relationship is over, their mental health is in the gutter, and they've got no clue who's behind it all. And let me tell you, some of these text messages weren't just PG teenage drama either. Some of them were getting really, really explicit. And here's the thing about a small town like Beale City. Once whispers start, they spread fast. And pretty soon, everyone had a theory. Some classmates were convinced it was one of their own. Like, who else would know this much about Lauryn and Owen's lives? Who else would care enough to stir up this much drama? And one girl in particular, Chloe Wilson, ended up right in the middle of those rumors. Chloe didn't really get along with Lauryn, so she became an easy target for suspicion. At one point, the texts were even traced to a phone ping down in Florida, exactly when Chloe was there on spring break. That looked really bad for her. Imagine being in 8th grade and suddenly everyone is side-eyeing you like you're some criminal mastermind. Teachers questioning you, classmates gossiping, parents whispering. But when her phone was checked, nothing. No evidence. She was innocent. Yet her reputation was definitely damaged. She hadn't done a thing. And that's one of the parts of this story that really stuck with me. The harassment didn't just ruin Lauryn and Owen's lives, it infected their entire community. Nobody felt safe. Everybody was a suspect. Meanwhile, the parents had had enough. They went to the police multiple times because this wasn't just bullying anymore, this was stalking. This was harassment on a scale that no 13-year-old should ever have to face. Because these messages weren't just bickering drama, they were getting really explicit. Explaining things about how Owen broke up with you because you didn't give him a... These are 13-year-olds, okay? That is disgusting. Like, to even suggest that they would be doing that anyways. They should not be doing that at that age. So whoever was sending these messages had really nasty and explicit language and ideals, and it was just getting really, really weird and out of hand. So the police started doing some digging, but it wasn't simple. The numbers were spoofed, meaning they were fake numbers designed to cover the sender's tracks. Every lead turned into a dead end. The investigation dragged on. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, all while Lauryn and Owen were still living this nightmare in real time. Every single day, their phones buzzed with new insults, new threats, new attempts to twist the knife. And here's what made it so terrifying. The messages were getting more and more personal. Whoever was behind them wasn't just close. They were inside their lives. They knew details nobody else should have known, which made the possibilities even scarier. And by this point, the case was getting so complicated that the FBI had to step in, which, let me just say, is wild to think about. You know, like, this isn't New York City, it's not LA, it's a tiny farm town in Michigan, population 300, and yet the FBI is involved because 2 middle school kids are being tormented by some faceless ghost hiding behind technology. But when the truth finally came out about who was sending those messages, it was worse than anyone could have imagined. So remember, by this point, we've got local police, we've got the FBI, we've got months of work trying to figure out who this mystery texter is. They'd traced numbers, they'd followed leads, they'd questioned kids, and every single time, it looked like they were close. But then the trail would just vanish. Because of the spoofing, everything looked like smoke and mirrors. But finally, investigators pulled enough data to pin things down. They tracked the messages through digital footprints, and the pattern that emerged was shocking. The trail didn't lead to a student. It didn't lead to a random creep online. It didn't even lead to someone out of state. It led back home. The person who had been tormenting Lauryn and Owen, sending over 12,000 texts and hundreds of emails, was none other than Lauryn's own mother, Kendra Licari. And I just have to stop here for a second, because when I watched this part of the documentary, my jaw literally hit the floor. Like, can you even imagine finding out that your own mum, the person who is supposed to protect you, love you, keep you safe, was the one attacking you all along. It's a level of betrayal I can't even wrap my head around. And Kendra wasn't just dabbling. She had spent months and months and months pretending to be someone else, disguising her number, crafting these manipulative messages. She destroyed her daughter's first relationship, shattered her self-esteem, and left Owen doubting everything, all while living under the same roof as Lauryn. That detail literally makes my skin crawl, because think about it. Lauryn was coming home, sitting at the dinner table, probably talking to her mum about how terrified she was, not knowing that the woman across from her was the one holding the phone. And the scariest part, if investigators hadn't pushed further, if the FBI hadn't followed that trail, who knows how long this could have gone on. I don't know about you, but when that reveal dropped, I had to pause the documentary and just sit with it and take a breather. Because we've all heard of catfishing, but this wasn't about romance scams or strangers on the internet. This was about a mother deliberately tormenting her own daughter. And the why is even more twisted. So here's where this case gets even more controversial. And honestly, where people are still divided after watching the documentary. Because the biggest question is, why would Kendra do this? Now, the FBI had the receipts. They had the digital trail, the spoofed numbers, the sheer volume of texts. That part isn't in question. What is in question is her motive. So the first theory that people came up with was cyber Munchausen by proxy. Some experts brought up something called cyber Munchausen by proxy, and if you've heard of Munchausen by proxy in the medical world, you know it's when a caregiver makes their child sick or pretends they're sick to get attention from it. But in the digital age, that's morphed. Instead of fabricating illnesses, a parent might fabricate harassment or crisis to keep themselves in the spotlight. In this case, the theory is that Kendra created this elaborate nightmare so that she could play the role of the supportive mother, comforting Lauryn while secretly being the source of her pain. It's a deeply manipulative cycle, because the victim keeps running back to the very person causing the harm. And when you think about it like that, it kind of does line up. Lauryn confided in her mum, leaned on her, cried to her about how scared she was, all while Kendra was the one on the other side of the screen sending the messages. That dual role of villain and savior is textbook Munchausen behavior. Theory number 2 is trauma reenactment. So this is what Kendra herself said. She admitted she had been sexually assaulted around the same age Lauryn was at the time. She claimed that watching her daughter enter those teen years triggered her unresolved trauma. Her words were something like, "I was afraid of letting her grow up. I wanted to protect her and keep her close." Now, if that was truly the root of it, if her past trauma warped into this obsessive need to control her daughter, it's heartbreaking. But here's the thing, protection doesn't look like telling your kid to kill herself. Protection doesn't look like isolating her from her friends and boyfriend. If anything, this excuse almost makes it harder to swallow. Theory number 3 is pure control and resentment. So there's the theory that maybe is the simplest and the hardest to accept, that this wasn't about trauma or sympathy at all. It was about control. Kendra was described as very involved, very hands-on in the community, even overbearing. Maybe this was her way of tightening her grip when Lauryn started pulling away. First love, independence, testing her wings. Some people think Kendra resented that freedom, and the texts were a way to keep Lauryn dependent, fearful, and firmly under her thumb. And let me tell you, the internet has not held back on this one. On Reddit, people have called Kendra evil, a monster, saying things like, she deserves to rot in jail forever. There's a real sense of outrage that she betrayed that sacred role of being a mother. Others, though, are more conflicted. Some say this is mental illness. It doesn't excuse her actions, but it explains them. I've seen people argue she should have been sent for psychiatric help instead of prison. And then there are those who are flat out skeptical of her explanations. They don't buy the trauma defense, they don't buy the Munchausen theory, they think she's simply manipulative, calculated, and cruel, and that she used her trauma story as a way to soften her image. And honestly, watching the documentary, I went back and forth myself, because yes, trauma can cause people to act out in destructive ways, but at the same time, the planning, the persistence, the sheer scale of this, that feels intentional. That feels like choice. Kendra said at one point in the documentary, she said, everyone makes mistakes in their life. Everyone drinks and drives, which I think is an insane comparison, because first of all, no, not everyone drinks and drives, actually. And yes, people do make mistakes, but this is quite the doozy, Kendra. I don't think you can really say that other people would do this too, you know what I mean? So my take is, personally, I think it's probably a tangled mix of all of the above. Trauma doesn't excuse what she did, but it might explain how her thinking got so warped. The Munchausen theory fits because she did play both villain and comforter, but the control theory, that's the one that really lands with me, because at the end of the day, these weren't random mistakes. These were thousands of messages, crafted and sent over months, and that is deliberate. To do that to your own daughter, that is not protection. That's possession. So once the FBI had the evidence and the trail pointed straight back to Kendra, the legal system finally stepped in. But here's something that really floored me in the documentary. When Kendra was confronted, she didn't outright deny it. She admitted to sending the bulk of the messages, but then tried to spin this wild explanation. She claimed that the first batch of messages wasn't her. According to her, someone else had actually started it, and she only picked it up later to make sure the police took it seriously. Like, I don't know about you, but that excuse just kind of makes it worse. That's not protecting your daughter. That is not helping. That's you choosing to pile on thousands more abusive messages, knowing full well how broken your kid was becoming. It's not a defense. It's a confession with extra steps. In December 2022, Kendra was arrested. The charges were serious. Multiple counts of stalking a minor, using a computer to commit a crime, and obstruction of justice. And imagine the shockwaves in Beale City. This wasn't some stranger. This wasn't some distant relative. This was the mum, the coach, the woman who was supposed to be a mentor in the community. Parents and kids alike were completely blindsided. And can I just quickly talk about Lauren's dad and Kendra's husband? Watching the documentary and watching him find out that it was actually his wife who was causing his daughter this pain all this time literally broke me, because imagine the betrayal. You and your wife have stuck by your daughter's side this whole time. Your wife has been advocating for this to be solved, and you find out that it was her the whole time sending these messages, as well as the messages were quite sexually explicit towards both Lauren and a lot towards Owen. I couldn't imagine finding out that my wife was making up explicit scenarios about a 14-year-old boy. To me, that really, really rubbed me the wrong way. So by 2023, Kendra pled guilty to stalking charges. The judge handed her a sentence of 19 months to 5 years in prison. Now, here's where public opinion really split. For a lot of people, especially online, that sentence felt far too light. They looked at the psychological devastation, the sheer scale of the harassment, and said, she should have gotten decades, not just a couple of years. Others argued prison wasn't enough in the first place. They felt what Kendra needed was intensive psychiatric treatment, that locking her up wouldn't undo the damage or address the root of her behavior. And honestly, watching the doc, I could see both sides of that debate. But either way, by August 2024, less than 2 years after her arrest, Kendra was released on parole. She was ordered to have no contact with Lauryn. And this is where things get really complicated. Because in the documentary, Lauryn admitted that she still missed her mum. And that detail, that broke me. Even after all the torment, even after the betrayal, Lauryn described how she emailed and called Kendra while she was in jail. Part of her still wanted that connection. And it makes sense, right? Because at the end of the day, that was still her mum. It shows just how tangled love and trauma can be. On one hand, Kendra was the person who caused her the most pain. On the other hand, she was still the mother Lauryn had grown up with, the person she should have been able to trust. Those feelings don't just vanish, they clash. They coexist. And in the interviews, you could feel that push and pull. Lauryn wanted distance, but she also ached for her mum's love. It's the kind of emotional conflict that doesn't have a neat resolution. As of Kendra's release though, Lauryn seemed to have stepped back again. She hasn't re-established contact. Maybe reaching out while her mum was behind bars felt safe, but facing her on the outside was too much. Either way, it was a reminder that healing isn't linear. It's messy, it's jagged, and Lauryn's journey is still unfolding. And then, of course, there is Owen. He finished high school in 2025, kept pursuing baseball, and even went on to play in college. He's talked about how hard this whole ordeal was, how it left him with trust issues, but also how determined he was not to let it define his entire future. And I admire that because at 13 he was thrust into something most adults wouldn't even be able to process, and he's still standing. Because for Owen, these texts didn't just ruin his relationship with Lauryn, it continued to cause trouble for Owen in other future relationships after he and Lauryn had separated. For example, I believe while he was away on holiday somewhere out of town, he met a girl and proceeded to stay in contact with her, and Kendra ended up finding this girl through her mum's social media, I believe, and started messaging this girl's mum nasty messages as well. So remember that it wasn't just Lauryn and Owen receiving these text messages, it was also people Owen was seeing. I believe it also became Owen's cousin at one stage was receiving messages too. Everyone involved was getting harassed by Kendra, and so it affected a wide pool of people. At the end of the day, whether Kendra sent the first message or the 12,000th, it doesn't change what she did. Trauma may explain it, but it doesn't excuse it. And to me, the most devastating part isn't even the prison sentence or the internet outrage. It's Lauryn, a daughter who still misses the mum who betrayed her, who wrestles with love and resenting the same person. That's the kind of wound that doesn't just heal with time. That's a fracture that lasts. So when Netflix dropped Unknown Number, the High School Catfish, the internet did what the internet always does. It had opinions, loud ones. And honestly, most people had the same gut reaction I did. Absolute outrage. On Reddit, the top comments were things like, "She's evil, she's a monster." Some even said that woman belongs in jail. And I can't blame them, because when you see the scale of the messages and you remember that it's not just some stranger, but a mother, it feels almost unforgivable. On TikTok, there were endless stitches and reactions of people watching the reveal moment, jaws literally dropping. People couldn't believe the betrayal, the audacity, the cruelty. There were memes, sure, but mostly it was just shock and anger. But then you had a second wave of conversation, the debates. Some people argued this was clearly mental illness. They pointed to the cyber Munchausen theory, to Kendra's unresolved trauma, to the bizarre logic of our explanation about making the police take it seriously. They said, yes, she did something horrific, but this is a case where therapy and psychiatric care are more important than prison. Others weren't buying it. They saw the thousands of texts, the careful spoofing of numbers, the way she strung this out over months, and said, no, this wasn't a breakdown. This was calculated. This was control. And honestly, that's kind of where I land too. I think trauma played a role for sure, but You don't accidentally send 12,000 abusive messages. That's not a mental slip. That's persistence. That is choice. And then there's the reaction from parents watching this. So many people online said the same thing. If she could do this to her own daughter, who can you even trust? It hit this nerve about parenting in the digital age, about how phones, social media, and privacy collide with control and safety. Some parents admitted they started questioning their own boundaries. Like, where's the line between being protective and being invasive? And Kendra's case is like the worst case scenario, taking involved mum and twisting it into something abusive and destructive. But amidst all the anger, there was also empathy for Lauryn. People felt for her in a big way. They could see the conflict, how she missed her mum even after everything. And it reminded people that real life isn't as black and white as we want it to be. That's part of why this documentary hit so hard. It wasn't just a true crime shocker. It sparked conversations about parenting, trauma, mental health, and trust. It forced people to sit with the messiness of it all. And here's where I stand. The outrage is completely valid. The debates are valid. But what matters most to me is Lauryn. Because while the internet is out here arguing over sentencing and psychology, she's the one who has to live with the scars. She's the one who has to wrestle with missing the mum who hurt her. And if you ask me, that is the real tragedy. The case is sensational, sure. The twist is shocking. But at the center of it is a kid who just wanted to be loved and protected by her mum, and instead ended up being tormented by her. So that is the story behind Netflix's unknown number, The High School Catfish. It's shocking, it's heartbreaking, and honestly, it is so complicated because on one level, it's about digital harassment and how far it can go. But on a deeper level, it's about trust. About what happens when the person you're supposed to trust the most, your mum, turns out to be the one that's hurting you. And that's what makes this case stick with me. The twist is jaw-dropping, sure, but it's Lauryn's reality that keeps replaying in my mind. A teenager caught between missing her mum and protecting herself from her mum. Trauma and love all tangled together. And I want to hear from you. Do you think Kendra's actions came from trauma and mental illness, or was this about control and cruelty? Should she have gotten more prison time, or do you think psychiatric help would have been the better route? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious how you will see it. And if you made it all the way through this episode, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you want more deep dives into cases like this, and share this with a friend who's been binging the Netflix doc too. Stay curious, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!